Captain Sarah Chen sat in the command center deep inside the moon. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of computers. Red lights flashed on the walls as data flowed across dozens of screens. She had been waiting for this moment her entire career. "Captain," called Sergeant Martinez from the sensor station. "Long-range scanners confirm it. The Zephyrian fleet is moving toward our system. 200 ships, just as our spies reported." Sarah nodded calmly. She had gray hair and tired eyes, but her voice was steady and strong. She had spent 30 years preparing for this day. "How long until they reach our boundary?" she asked. 72 days at their current speed," Martinez replied. Sarah looked at the big screen that showed their solar system. A thin blue line marked humanity's territorial boundary, 2 light-years from the sun in all directions. It was an invisible sphere that surrounded everything humans called home. "Send the message," Sarah ordered. Communications Officer Park pressed several buttons on her console. "All channels open, Captain. Broadcasting on every known frequency in the galaxy." Sarah stood up and walked to the center of the room. She had practiced these words many times, but saying them for real felt different. "This is Terra Command to all approaching Zephyrian vessels," she began. Her words were being sent across space at the speed of light. "You are moving toward humanity's territorial boundary. This is our final warning to you. Turn your ships around and go back where you came from. We do not want war, but we will defend ourselves. You have been warned." The message was automatically translated into 237 different languages. Every major species in the galaxy would be able to understand it. "Message sent, Captain," Officer Park confirmed. Now they had to wait. It would take several hours for the message to reach the Zephyrian fleet. Their reply would take several more hours to come back. Sarah walked to her office behind the command center. The walls were covered with pictures of Earth and its people. She picked up a photo of her daughter who lived in New Tokyo. Soon she might never see her again. The door chimed. "Come in," Sarah said. General Thompson entered the room. He was a big man with white hair and a serious face. He commanded all of Earth's military forces. "Sarah, are you ready for this?" he asked quietly. She looked at him for a long moment. "We've been preparing for 50 years, Jim. If we're not ready now, we never will be." General Thompson sat down in the chair across from her desk. "The other defense stations are reporting ready status. All weapon systems are online. The fleet is in position," Sarah nodded. "Most people on Earth thought they only had a few hundred spacecraft. They were wrong. Humanity had been building ships in secret for decades. Hidden factories in the asteroid belt had been working day and night." "What about the civilians?" Sarah asked. "Evacuation of the outer colonies is complete," Thompson replied. "Everyone is either on Earth or in the deep shelters. If something goes wrong, nothing will go wrong," Sarah said firmly. "We know exactly what we're doing." But even as she said the words, Sarah felt afraid. Not for herself, but for all the people depending on her. 8 billion humans were about to learn if their leaders had prepared well enough. 8 hours later, the reply came. Officer Park looked up from her console with a worried expression. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Zephyrian fleet." "Put it on the main screen," Sarah ordered. The image that appeared made everyone in the command center go quiet. Admiral Kethavar stood on his ship's bridge looking directly at the camera. His red eyes seemed to glow with anger. "Primitive species of Sol 3, he began. His voice was deep and cold. "Your resistance is meaningless. Prepare for integration into the Zephyrian Empire. Your world's resources and people will serve the greater galactic order. You have no choice in this matter." The transmission ended. The command center remained silent for several seconds. "Arrogant bastard," Sergeant Martinez muttered under his breath. Sarah almost smiled. "Well, we tried to warn them." Begin Phase 1 activation. All around the solar system, hidden installations began coming online. On the dark side of the moon, massive doors opened to reveal weapon systems that had been hidden for decades. In the asteroid belt, camouflaged stations powered up their reactors. Most importantly, the monitoring stations scattered throughout space began working. Humanity had been watching the galaxy for a long time. They knew where every major fleet was located. "Captain," Officer Park said excitedly, "we're getting reports from stations Alpha through Zeta. All systems are green." Sarah felt a mixture of pride and fear. The weapons her species had built were incredibly powerful. She hoped they would never have to use them. But the Zephyrians continued moving toward Earth's boundary. 2 weeks passed. The alien fleet was now only days away from crossing the invisible line that humanity had drawn around their territory. Sarah barely slept during those 2 weeks. Reports came in constantly from monitoring stations throughout the galaxy. Other alien empires were watching to see what would happen. Some were betting on humanity. Most expected the Zephyrians to win easily. "Captain," Martinez called out during the night shift, "the Zephyrian fleet has slowed down. They're scanning our outer system." Sarah came over to look at his screen. The enemy ships were still outside the boundary, but they were clearly studying Earth's defenses. "What are they seeing?" she asked. "Exactly what we want them to see," Martinez replied with a small smile. "A few orbital platforms around Earth, some mining stations in the asteroid belt. Basic defensive systems, the real weapons remained hidden. Humanity had learned long ago that showing your true strength too early was a mistake. Let the enemy think you were weak until it was too late for them to escape." "Any change in their formation?" Sarah asked. "No, Captain. They're maintaining standard attack formation." 200 ships in a tight group. Sarah nodded. That was exactly what their war plans had predicted. The Zephyrians were following the same tactics they had used to conquer hundreds of other worlds. But Earth was not like those other worlds. "Time until they cross the boundary?" Sarah asked. Martinez checked his calculations. 47 hours, 18 minutes. Sarah took a deep breath. Soon, the galaxy would learn what humanity had been building in secret. The next day, General Thompson visited the command center again. His face looked grim. "Sarah, I just got word from intelligence," he said quietly. "The Zephyrian Emperor himself is watching this battle. If we lose..." "We won't lose," Sarah interrupted. "Trust me, Jim. Trust our people. Trust what we've built." But privately, Sarah knew the risks. If humanity's secret weapons failed, Earth would fall. Their civilization would end. Their children would grow up as slaves in an alien empire. She walked over to the communications console. "Officer Park, open a channel to all defense stations." "Channel open, Captain." Sarah spoke clearly and calmly. "All stations, this is Terra Command. In 36 hours we will either be free or we will be dead. Every person at every station knows their job. Trust your training. Trust your weapons. Trust each other. Terra Command out." As the final hours passed, Sarah thought about humanity's long journey to this moment. For centuries, humans had dreamed of meeting other intelligent species. They had imagined friendship and cooperation among the stars. Instead, they had discovered a galaxy full of empires that conquered anyone weaker than themselves. Humanity had learned this lesson the hard way, when the first alien visitors had tried to take over Earth 60 years ago. That first invasion had failed, but barely. Humanity had been lucky more than strong. The aliens had underestimated human determination and creativity. After that victory, human leaders had made a decision. Never again would they be caught unprepared. They would build weapons and defenses in secret. They would study every alien empire and learn their weaknesses. Most importantly, they would appear weak while becoming strong. Now it was time to see if their strategy had worked. "Captain," Sergeant Martinez announced, "Zephyrian fleet is 6 hours from boundary crossing. They're maintaining course and speed." Sarah looked at the main screen one last time. The blue line marking humanity's boundary seemed so thin and fragile. But it represented something important, the right of a species to exist in peace. "All stations report ready, Captain," Officer Park said. Sarah sat down in her command chair. "Then we wait." The next few hours would decide humanity's fate. Admiral Cathvar stood on the bridge of his massive warship, looking out at the stars. His forearms moved quickly over the control panels as he read the latest reports. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered another star system last week. Now they needed a new target. The bridge was huge and dark, lit only by the blue glow of computer screens. Other alien officers worked at their stations. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few had skin like metal. They all served the Empire now. The Zephyrians had brought them all together under one rule. "Admiral," called out Lieutenant Vexmore from the scanning station, "we have found something interesting." Kethvar's red eyes turned toward the young officer. His gray skin showed the scars of many battles. He had been fighting for the Empire for over 50 years. In that time he had seen the conquest of hundreds of worlds. "Show me," Kethvar said with his deep voice. The main screen lit up. It showed a small yellow star with several planets around it. The third planet was blue and green with white clouds moving across its surface. "This system is called Sol," Vexmore explained. The third planet is inhabited by a species called humans. Our scouts have been watching them for several months. Kethavar looked at the planet with interest. It looked peaceful and quiet. No huge space stations, no massive fleets of warships, just a few small metal objects moving around the planet. What do we know about these humans? He asked. Another officer stepped forward. This was Dr. Zilketh, the Empire's top expert on alien species. She had studied over 300 different races. They are very young, Admiral, she said. They only learned to fly in space about 100 years ago. They have not even left their own star system yet. Our scanners show they have some basic technology, but nothing that could threaten us. Kethvar nodded. This sounded like every other primitive world they had conquered. The Empire always won because they had better weapons and ships. How many of them are there? He asked. About 8 billion humans live on their world, Dr. Zilketh replied. That is a good number for workers. They could be very useful to the Empire. The Admiral walked closer to the screen. The planet looked so small and helpless. He had seen this same scene many times before. A primitive world, unaware that their freedom was about to end. What about their military? Kethvar asked. Very basic, said Commander Thexval, the ship's military expert. They have some nuclear weapons, but those are old technology. They have a few hundred small spacecraft, but nothing larger than a transport ship. Their biggest weapons are on the planet's surface. Kethvar smiled. Nuclear weapons were what most young species used. The Empire had faced nuclear weapons thousands of times. Their ship's shields could easily stop such primitive attacks. Any signs of advanced technology? The Admiral asked. Dr. Zilketh looked at her datapad. Some of our scouts reported strange energy readings, but our computers say these are just natural phenomena. Nothing to worry about. What about their communications? Kethavar wanted to know everything. They use radio waves and some quantum signals, Commander Thexval said. Very simple stuff. We broke their codes in a few days. They seem to be talking about normal things. Trade, weather, entertainment shows. The Admiral felt confident. This would be another easy victory for the Empire. He had conquered species far more advanced than these humans. How long to prepare the fleet? He asked. 2 weeks, Admiral, Commander Thexval replied. We should bring about 200 ships. That should be more than enough for a world this size. Kethavar thought about this. 200 ships was a lot. Usually they only needed 50 ships to conquer a primitive world. But it was better to bring too many ships than too few. Very well, he decided. Begin preparations. We move in 2 weeks. The bridge became busy with activity. Officers began sending orders to other ships in the fleet. The Empire's war machine was starting to move. But as the Zephyrians prepared for another easy conquest, they did not notice several things. Their scouts had indeed detected strange energy readings near Earth. These readings were not natural phenomena. They came from hidden human technology. The humans' quantum communications were not simple either. The signals looked basic on the surface, but they carried hidden information. The real messages were encoded in ways the Empire's computers could not understand. Most importantly, the Empire's scouts had counted wrong. There were not just a few hundred human spacecraft. There were thousands of them. But most were hidden in the dark spaces between planets, invisible to normal scanners. Dr. Zilketh reviewed her data one more time. She had classified humans as Category 3 minor threat. This meant they were suitable for labor after conquest. She had made this same classification for dozens of species before, but something bothered her about the energy readings. They were too regular to be natural, too organized. She decided to mention this to the Admiral one more time. Admiral, she said carefully, about those energy readings near Earth, what about them? Kethavar asked without looking up from his planning. They seem very organized, almost like they were made by intelligent beings. The Admiral finally looked at her. Doctor, you said yourself they were natural phenomena. These humans are primitive. They barely have space travel. What could they possibly build that our scanners cannot detect? Dr. Zilketh wanted to argue, but she knew better. The Admiral had never been wrong about military matters. The Empire had conquered hundreds of worlds using the same methods. You are right, Admiral, she said quietly. As the days passed, the Zephyrian fleet gathered. 200 of the Empire's best warships prepared for the journey to Earth. Each ship carried enough firepower to destroy a moon. Together they could turn a whole planet into dust. The ships were beautiful and terrible. They looked like metal daggers floating in space, covered with weapons and armor. Each ship was over a kilometer long. The Admiral's flagship was even bigger, stretching 2 kilometers from front to back. Admiral Kethvar stood in his private quarters, looking at a hologram of Earth. Soon, this world would belong to the Empire. Its people would work in Empire factories and mines. Its resources would fuel Empire expansion. He had done this so many times before. The process was always the same. First, the Empire would demand surrender. Most primitive species gave up immediately when they saw the size of the Empire's fleet. If they refused, the Empire would demonstrate its power by destroying a few cities. Then the species would surrender. After surrender, the Empire would take control of the planet's government. The local population would be allowed to live, but they would serve the Empire. Their children would learn Empire languages and customs. Within a generation, they would forget they had ever been free. It was a good system. The Empire grew stronger with each conquest. The conquered species eventually became grateful for Empire protection and order. Kethvar was sure the humans would follow the same pattern. They seemed like a reasonable species. They would probably surrender quickly once they understood the situation. The Admiral looked at his reflection in the window. His gray skin showed the marks of many battles. His red eyes had seen the end of hundreds of civilizations. Soon they would see the end of humanity's independence. But Admiral Kethvar did not know that at that very moment, alarms were sounding in a hidden base on the dark side of Earth's moon. Human sensors had detected the gathering Zephyrian fleet. After 50 years of preparation, humanity's greatest test was about to begin. The humans had been waiting for this day. They were ready. Admiral Kethvar watched his ships cross the invisible line that the humans had drawn around their territory. He felt nothing but confidence. 200 of the Empire's finest warships moved forward like a metal tide. Behind them, the conquered species of 100 worlds had provided the materials and labor for this fleet. "Admiral," reported Commander Thexval, "we have crossed their territorial boundary." No response from the human fleet. Kethvar smiled with satisfaction. Just as he had expected, the humans were too frightened to fight. They would probably surrender in the next few hours. "Any sign of their military forces?" he asked. "Scanners show a few hundred small craft near their planet," the commander replied. "Nothing that poses a threat to our fleet." The Admiral looked at the tactical display. Earth looked so peaceful and blue. Soon it would belong to the Empire. But then something changed. "Admiral," shouted Lieutenant Vexmore from his scanning station, "I'm detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system." Before Kethvar could respond, space itself seemed to attack his fleet. The first weapons to strike were unlike anything the Empire had ever faced. Invisible mines scattered throughout space suddenly activated. These were not normal explosives. They were gravitational weapons that twisted the fabric of space itself. The Imperial warship Conquest was the first to die. One moment it was a mighty vessel 2 kilometers long. The next moment space around it folded inward. The ship was crushed into a ball no bigger than a marble, then vanished completely. 5,000 crew members simply stopped existing. "What was that?" Admiral Kethvar shouted. But before anyone could answer, more ships began dying. The mines were everywhere, hidden in empty space where no scanner could detect them. The Empire's mighty vessels were being compressed out of existence. "Evasive maneuvers," Kethvar ordered. "All ships scatter." The fleet broke apart as captains tried to avoid the invisible death traps. But the mines were just the beginning. From hidden bases in the asteroid belt, humanity's real weapons emerged. What the Zephyrians had thought were simple mining stations revealed their true nature. Massive doors opened to show weapon platforms the size of cities. "Admiral detecting launch signatures," Commander Thexval called out. Hundreds of them. On the tactical display, red dots began racing toward the Zephyrian fleet. But these were not normal missiles. They were moving at incredible speeds, 99% the speed of light. "Impossible," whispered Dr. Zilketh. "Nothing can accelerate matter to such speeds." She was wrong. Humanity had learned how to build relativistic kill vehicles decades ago. Each projectile carried the destructive power of a small star. When they hit, they didn't just destroy their targets. They vaporized them completely. The Imperial cruiser Domination tried to shoot down the incoming projectiles with its defensive weapons. The ship's computers calculated intercept courses and fired thousands of energy bolts. But the human weapons were moving too fast and following unpredictable paths. When the first kill vehicle struck, domination simply ceased to exist. The ship was turned into a cloud of superheated gas in less than a second. The explosion was so bright it could be seen from Earth's surface. "Shields up. All power to defensive systems," Admiral Kethvar commanded. But the Empire's shields, which had stopped every weapon they had ever faced, were useless against humanity's attack. The relativistic projectiles punched through energy barriers like they were made of paper. More ships died. The battleship Eternal Glory, the cruiser Iron Fist, the destroyer Pack Hunter Squadron, all reduced to glowing atoms in space. "Admiral, we've lost 40% of the fleet," Commander Thexaval reported. His voice was shaking with fear, but the worst was yet to come. From platforms orbiting Earth, new weapons began firing. These were not projectiles or energy beams. They were something far more terrifying: matter dissolution rays. The weapons worked by breaking apart the forces that held atoms together. When the invisible beams touched a ship's hull, the metal didn't melt or explode. It simply stopped being solid matter and became a cloud of individual particles. The dreadnought Unstoppable, pride of the Zephyrian fleet, was caught by one of these beams. The crew watched in horror as their ship began dissolving around them. First the outer hull disappeared, then the inner compartments, then the engine room. In minutes, a vessel that had taken 10 years to build was reduced to cosmic dust. "All ships retreat," Admiral Kethvar finally ordered. "Emergency jump to hyperspace." But humanity had planned for this too. Strange energy fields activated throughout the battle zone, creating what humans called hyperspace dampers. The Zephyrian ships found they could not escape into faster-than-light travel. They were trapped. "Jump drive's not responding," shouted the navigation officer. "Something is interfering with our hyperspace generators." Admiral Kethvar looked at his tactical display in disbelief. In less than 4 hours, his mighty fleet had been reduced to scattered survivors. Ships that had conquered star systems were now drifting helplessly in space, their crews sending out distress signals. "How is this possible?" he whispered. Dr. Zilketh, her face pale with shock, studied her sensor readings. "Admiral, these humans, they're not primitive at all. Their technology is more advanced than ours." The truth was becoming clear. Humanity had deliberately appeared weak. They had hidden their true capabilities while studying every empire in the galaxy. They had learned the Zephyrians' tactics, their weaknesses, their standard formations. Most importantly, they had built weapons specifically designed to defeat Empire technology. "Admiral," Commander Thexval said quietly, "we're receiving a transmission from the humans." Captain Sarah Chen appeared on the main screen. Behind her, the walls showed tactical displays tracking every surviving Zephyrian ship. "Admiral Kethvar," she said calmly, "your fleet has been defeated. Your ships are disabled and your crews are sending distress calls. But we are not monsters like your empire." She paused to let her words sink in. "All survivors will be collected and returned safely to neutral territory. Your wounded will receive medical care. Your dead will be treated with respect. But you will also carry a message back to your empire." The screen switched to show the battle zone from space. Where once a mighty fleet had advanced on Earth, now only debris and rescue pods remained. The demonstration of human military power was complete and overwhelming. "Tell your emperor that Earth's boundary is absolute," Captain Chen continued. "We warned you to turn back. You chose to ignore that warning. This is the result." Admiral Kethvar stared at the destruction around him. In his 50 years of military service, he had never seen anything like it. The Empire's invincible fleet had been destroyed by a species they had called primitive. "We don't want your empire," Chen said. "We don't want your territory. We don't want to rule other species. All we want is to be left alone. But if you or anyone else crosses our boundary again, the response will be even more decisive." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge of Kethvar's flagship in shocked silence. Human rescue ships were already moving among the wreckage, collecting survivors and providing medical aid. True to their word, they treated the defeated Zephyrians with mercy and respect. But the message was clear to everyone who witnessed the battle. Humanity had revealed themselves as the galaxy's new apex predators. They had the technology to destroy any fleet, conquer any world, defeat any empire. Yet they chose restraint. They asked only to be left in peace. As Admiral Kethvar was taken aboard a human rescue vessel, he thought about the reports he would have to make. How could he explain to the Empire that their greatest fleet had been destroyed by a species that barely controlled one star system? The answer was simple but terrifying. Humanity had been preparing for this day for decades. They had studied every empire, learned every weakness, built countermeasures for every threat. They had appeared weak while becoming the strongest force in the galaxy. The young human medic treating his wounds spoke kindly to him. "You'll be fine, Admiral. We'll have you back to your own people soon." Kethvar looked into the human's eyes. There was no hatred there, no desire for revenge, just professional compassion. These creatures were unlike any species he had ever encountered. They had the power to destroy empires, but they used that power only to defend their freedom. As his rescue ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying him away from the battle zone, Admiral Kethvar realized that the galaxy had changed forever. The age of unchecked imperial expansion was over. Humanity had drawn a line in space and proved they could enforce it absolutely. Ambassador Veltar moved carefully through the corridors of Harmony Point Station. The neutral meeting place floated at the edge of human territory, just outside their declared boundary. She had never been so nervous in her long diplomatic career. 3 months had passed since the destruction of the Zephyrian fleet. News of the battle had spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Every species, every empire, every independent world was asking the same questions. Who were these humans? How had they become so powerful? What did they want? Veltar represented the Galactic Commerce Consortium, a peaceful alliance of trading species. Unlike the military empires, they survived through negotiation and mutual benefit. Now they had been chosen to make first contact with humanity on behalf of the entire galaxy. The meeting room was simple and clean. Veltar sat at one end of a long table, her green skin reflecting the soft lights. Her forearms rested nervously on the polished surface. Across from her sat Admiral Sarah Chen, now promoted after her victory over the Zephyrians. Admiral Chen looked tired but alert. Her gray hair was pulled back neatly, and her blue uniform bore new ribbons showing her recent promotion. But what struck Veltar most was the human's calm confidence. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us," Veltar began carefully. "The galaxy has many questions about recent events." "I'm sure it does," Admiral Chen replied with a small smile. "What would you like to know?" Veltar had prepared for this moment, but now she felt uncertain. How do you negotiate with a species that had just demonstrated the ability to destroy any fleet in space? "First, we need to understand your intentions," she said. "Your military demonstration was impressive. Many species are concerned about your expansion plans." Admiral Chen leaned back in her chair. "Ambassador, let me save us both some time. We have no expansion plans. We want no territory beyond our declared boundary. We seek no control over other species." "But your weapons," Veltar began. "Our weapons exist for one purpose only," Chen interrupted. "To protect our right to exist in peace. Nothing more." Veltar studied the human's face, looking for signs of deception. In her experience, species with such military power always wanted to use it for conquest. But Admiral Chen seemed genuinely uninterested in galactic domination. "How long have you been preparing for this?" Veltar asked. "A long time," Chen admitted. "We've known about galactic civilization for over 2 centuries. The words hit Veltar like a physical blow. 2 centuries? But our records show first contact was only 3 months ago. Admiral Chen's smile grew wider. "Ambassador, your records show what we wanted them to show. We've been among you for a very long time." The implications were staggering. If humans had been infiltrating galactic society for 200 years, they knew everything. Every military secret, every political weakness, every technological development. "You've been spying on us," Veltar said, her voice barely a whisper. "We've been learning from you," Chen corrected. "Every empire that has ever existed. Every species that has ever been conquered. We studied your histories, your technologies, your military tactics. We learned what mistakes to avoid." Veltar's mind raced. Human agents had been present during the fall of the Craxian hegemony. They had watched the Zephyrian empires rise to power. They had seen countless species surrender their freedom to stronger neighbors. "Why reveal yourselves now?" she asked. "Because we were ready," Chen said simply. "We had studied every major military power in the galaxy. We had developed countermeasures for every known weapon system. We had built defenses that could stop any invasion. The Zephyrians thought you were primitive, and that was intentional. We learned early that showing strength too soon makes you a target. Better to appear weak while preparing for the inevitable attack." Admiral Chen stood up and walked to the large window that showed the stars outside. "Ambassador, let me tell you about humanity's philosophy of war. We don't fight for conquest or glory. We don't seek to build empires or rule other species. We fight for one principle only, the right to exist unmolested." Veltar found herself leaning forward, fascinated despite her fear. "Explain." "Every species in this galaxy follows the same pattern," Chen continued. "They grow strong, then they conquer their neighbors. The strong rule the weak. The advanced dominate the primitive. It's been the same story for millions of years." She turned back to face Veltar. "But humans learned something different from our own history. We learned that the strong have a responsibility to protect the weak, not exploit them. You're saying you want to protect other species. I'm saying we want all species to have the same right we claim for ourselves, the right to exist in peace. No more conquest. No more empires built on the suffering of others." Veltar was quiet for a long moment, processing what she had heard. It was unlike anything she had encountered in galactic politics. "The Zephyrian survivors spoke of mercy," she said finally. "You could have killed them all. What would that have accomplished?" Chen asked. "Dead enemies teach no lessons. Admiral Kethvar is alive to tell his emperor what happens when someone crosses our boundary. And if the Empire tries again?" Chen's expression grew cold. "The next response will be more decisive. We gave them one warning. If they attack again, we won't stop with just destroying their fleet." The threat was delivered calmly, but Veltar understood its implications. Humanity had the power to destroy entire worlds if necessary. "What about other empires?" Veltar asked. "The Hegemony Coalition? The Star-Lords Alliance? The same rules apply to everyone," Chen said. "Respect our boundary and leave us in peace, and we have no quarrel. Cross the line and face the consequences." Veltar felt a mixture of fear and hope. Fear because humanity's military power was beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. Hope because they seemed genuinely interested in peace. "There's something else," Admiral Chen continued. "We've been watching the galaxy for a long time. We've seen weak species crushed by stronger neighbors. We've watched entire civilizations disappear into slavery. That's the way things have always been." "Not anymore," Chen said firmly. "Humanity considers unprovoked aggression against peaceful species to be a violation of galactic order." Veltar's eyes widened. "You're saying you would intervene to protect other species?" "If necessary. We believe all intelligent beings have the right to exist freely. Empires that prey on the weak are a threat to galactic peace." The room fell silent as Veltar absorbed this information. Humanity wasn't just defending themselves. They were claiming the role of galactic peacekeepers. "How can we be sure you won't become conquerors yourselves?" she asked. Admiral Chen walked back to the table and sat down. "Because we've had the power to conquer for decades and we haven't used it. We could have revealed our strength at any time and built our own empire. Instead, we remained hidden and prepared only defenses. But now you've revealed yourselves. Because the Zephyrians forced us to. They wouldn't accept our warning, so we demonstrated our resolve." Veltar looked at her notes, trying to organize her thoughts. "The Galactic Commerce Consortium would like to propose a treaty." "What kind of treaty?" "Recognition of your territorial claims in exchange for trade agreements and mutual security guarantees." Admiral Chen nodded. "We're interested in peaceful trade. We have technologies that could benefit many species. But understand this, our boundary remains absolute. No military vessels, no armed colonies, no expansion attempts." "Agreed. What about the other empires?" "They can make the same choice the consortium is making. Peace and trade or isolation and hostility. We prefer the first option." Veltar prepared to ask another question, but Admiral Chen held up her hand. "Ambassador, there's one more thing you need to understand. Humanity doesn't want to rule the galaxy. We don't want to be its police force, but we will not allow aggressive empires to continue their expansion unchecked." "What does that mean?" "It means the age of conquest is over. Any empire that tries to build itself through the suffering of others will find humanity standing in their way." As the meeting continued, Veltar realized she was witnessing a fundamental shift in galactic politics. For the first time in recorded history, the strongest military power was choosing restraint over conquest. The galaxy would never be the same. Captain Maria Santos stood on the bridge of the patrol ship Guardian, watching the traffic moving peacefully through human space. 6 months had passed since the Zephyrian defeat, and the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Through the viewport, she could see merchant ships from dozens of species traveling together in a convoy. Zephyrian traders flew alongside their former enemies. Krellan cargo haulers shared navigation data with Vorthan passenger liners. Species that had been at war for centuries now cooperated under humanity's protection. "Captain," called out Lieutenant Kim from the communication station, "we're receiving a priority message from Terra Command." Maria walked over to read the message. Her expression grew serious as she scanned the text. "What is it?" asked Commander Jackson, her second-in-command. "Trouble in the Kepler sector," Maria replied. "The Draconis Empire is threatening the Altarian colonies again." Jackson nodded grimly. The Draconis Empire was one of the few aggressive powers that hadn't learned from the Zephyrian example. They continued to expand their territory through conquest and intimidation. "Same pattern as before?" Jackson asked. "Same pattern," Maria confirmed. "They're demanding the Altarians surrender their mining rights and submit to Empire rule. The Altarians have requested our protection." Maria had seen this situation many times in recent months. Whenever an aggressive empire threatened peaceful species, the victim sent messages to Terra Command asking for help. Humanity's reputation as protectors had spread quickly across the galaxy. "Set course for the Kepler sector," Maria ordered. "Maximum speed." The Guardian was one of humanity's new patrol ships designed specifically for peacekeeping missions. It was smaller than the warships that had defeated the Zephyrians, but still carried enough firepower to handle most threats. As they traveled through hyperspace, Maria reviewed the intelligence reports about the Draconis Empire. They were an old military power, built on the conquest of weaker species. Their tactics were brutal but effective. They would attack civilian targets until their enemies surrendered. But they had never faced humanity before. 3 days later, the Guardian arrived at the edge of Altarian space. The scene was familiar, a Draconis battle fleet surrounding the peaceful mining colonies demanding surrender. "Captain," reported Ensign Foster from the sensor station, 47 Draconis warships in attack formation around the third planet. The Altarian Defense Force consists of 12 lightly armed patrol boats. Maria looked at the tactical display. The Draconis ships were old but well-maintained. Against most enemies, they would be overwhelming. Against the Guardian, they were just targets. "Open a channel to the Draconis fleet commander," Maria ordered. The main screen activated, showing the bridge of the Draconis flagship. Admiral Zexthor glared at the camera with his yellow eyes. His lizard-like face showed the scars of many battles. "Who dares interrupt the glory of the Draconis Empire?" he hissed. "This is Captain Santos of the Terran patrol ship Guardian," Maria replied calmly. "You are threatening a peaceful species under humanity's protection. Withdraw your forces immediately." Admiral Zexthor laughed, a harsh sound like grinding metal. "One human ship against the might of the Empire? You must be insane." "Admiral, you have clearly not studied recent galactic events," Maria said patiently. "I suggest you contact your intelligence services before making any decisions you might regret." The alien admiral's expression grew suspicious. "What are you talking about, human?" 3 months ago, the Zephyrian Empire sent 200 ships to conquer Earth. None of them returned home. Ask yourself, if we can destroy the Zephyrian fleet, what do you think we can do to your forces? For the first time, doubt appeared in Zexthor's eyes. The destruction of the Zephyrian fleet was known throughout the galaxy, but many aggressive species had dismissed it as luck or trickery. "You're bluffing," the Admiral said, but his voice lacked conviction. "I'm giving you a chance to withdraw peacefully," Maria replied. "The Altarians are under our protection. Leave now, and no one needs to get hurt." Admiral Zexthor cut the transmission without responding. Maria could see the Draconis ships beginning to move into new formations. "Captain," Commander Jackson said quietly, "are we really going to fight 47 ships?" Maria smiled. "We won't have to fight them all. Watch." She opened a new communication channel, this time broadcasting to all ships in the system. "Attention all vessels. This is Terra Command Patrol Ship Guardian. The Draconis Empire has 30 seconds to begin withdrawing from Altarian space. If any Draconis ship fires on Altarian civilians or attempts to land troops, we will respond with appropriate force. The 30 seconds passed in silence. Then the Draconis flagship opened fire on one of the mining stations, Maria's. Response was swift and devastating. The Guardian's primary weapon was a scaled-down version of the matter dissolution ray that had destroyed the Zephyrian fleet. An invisible beam reached out across space and touched the Draconis flagship. Admiral Zexthor had just enough time to realize his mistake before his ship began coming apart at the molecular level. The massive vessel simply dissolved into cosmic dust, taking 5,000 crew members with it. The other Draconis ships stopped moving. "This is Captain Santos to all remaining Draconis vessels," Maria broadcast. "You have seen what happens to ships that threaten our protected species. You have 1 minute to begin withdrawing, or you will share your admiral's fate." The response was immediate. 46 Draconis warships turned away from the Altarian colonies and jumped to hyperspace as fast as their engines could carry them. "Target neutralized," reported Ensign Foster. "All hostile ships have left the system." Maria nodded with satisfaction. Another crisis resolved without major bloodshed. The Draconis Empire would think twice before threatening peaceful species again. "Captain," Lieutenant Kim called out, "we're receiving a message from the Altarian government." The screen showed President Kalar, the elected leader of the Altarian colonies. His blue-skinned face was filled with gratitude. "Captain Santos, our people owe you a debt we can never repay." "How can we thank you?" "No thanks necessary, Mr. President," Maria replied. "Just continue being the peaceful, productive people you've always been. That's all we ask." As the Guardian prepared to leave the system, Commander Jackson approached Maria's command chair. "Captain, do you ever think about what we've become?" he asked quietly. "What do you mean? 6 months ago we were just another species hiding in our corner of the galaxy. Now we're the Galactic Police Force. We're deciding who gets to exist and who doesn't." Maria considered the question carefully. It was something she thought about often. "Jack, do you remember what it was like before?" she asked. "Empires conquering anyone weaker than themselves. Entire civilizations disappearing into slavery. The strong preying on the weak without consequence. Yes, but now we're the strong ones. What if we become like them?" Maria looked out at the stars where dozens of species were now able to live in peace because humanity stood ready to defend them. "The difference is choice," she said finally. "The old empires chose conquest. We choose protection. They built their power on the suffering of others. We use our power to prevent suffering. But what if future generations make different choices? Then they won't be human anymore," Maria said firmly. "Our whole identity is built on the idea that the strong should protect the weak. If we ever abandon that principle, we'll become something else entirely." A new message appeared on the communications console. Another species was requesting humanity's protection from aggressive neighbors. Another chance to prove that power could be used for good instead of evil. "Set course for the Vega system," Maria ordered. "It looks like we're needed again." As the Guardian jumped to hyperspace, Maria thought about the galaxy they were creating. It wasn't perfect. There were still conflicts, still injustices, still suffering. But for the first time in galactic history, the weak had protectors who asked for nothing in return. Humanity had drawn a line around their territory and defended it absolutely. But more importantly, they had drawn a line around the principle of peaceful existence and defended that just as fiercely. The age of unchecked conquest was over. The age of protected peace had begun. In command centers throughout human space, other patrol ships received their assignments. Captain Williams was heading to the Centaurus region, where a trade dispute threatened to become a shooting war. Captain Lopez was investigating reports of slave trading in the Outer Rim. Captain Thompson was escorting a convoy of refugee ships to safety. Each mission was different, but they all served the same purpose: maintaining the peace that humanity had established through strength. The galaxy was learning a new lesson. Power didn't have to corrupt. Strength didn't have to lead to oppression. The strong could choose to lift up the weak instead of crushing them. And as long as humanity remembered that lesson, the stars would remain free.